Welcome back to Recruiting Blitz. My name is Verghese. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Before we get started, be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel. Be sure to check out our work over at InsideNebraska.com as well. Plenty to get into coming out of the weekend. Dylan Raiola's injury, TJ Latif stepping in as the new starting quarterback through the rest of the season. Follow from Nebraska's loss on Saturday and plenty of recruiting coverage from the biggest recruiting weekend of Nebraska's 2025 football season. I said it before. We'll continue to say it again. It's possible to lose games and still have positive recruiting weekends. And for those of you that were in attendance or from watching from home, it should come as no surprise that the atmosphere and the just the crowd, the blackout environment in Memorial Stadium made quite the impact on top recruits that were in attendance on Saturday night. So going to get right into it, just where things stand coming out of the weekend, where Nebraska stands. Got plenty more over at InsideNebraska.com, plenty more coming through the week as well. But just wanted to run down some of the top names in town, the latest there. Coming out of the weekend, Field Nebraska is trending for 2027 five-star tight end Ahmad Hudson, number one tight end in the country. He was back on campus for the third time in total. And I think for him and Cooper Terwilliger, four-star tight end out of South Dakota, who I input a prediction for ahead of the weekend and still feel really good about coming out of the weekend. It's the usage of the tight ends. It's the evolution of that position under Dana Holgerson in this offense. How involved Luke Lindemeyer was on Saturday night, both as a run blocker and as a pass catcher. The way the coaching points for Marcus Satterfield, the usage of the unit and what they asked from the tight ends really speaks to both of those guys. For both of them, connecting with Trey Taylor while in town. Hudson, of course, those two go back before Nebraska was really involved in both of their recruitments. They were at camps together, have developed a bit of a bond, and for Terwilliger, that's been a relationship that's developed steadily since Taylor's committed. Terwilliger, of course, was on campus a couple weeks ago for the Michigan State game, but was not able to catch up with Taylor then just because Taylor didn't make the visit that weekend. So they got a little more time together this weekend, got some in-person interaction. So feel good about Nebraska potentially landing the number one and number nine tight end. As for with Hudson, I think it's a matter. It's a you're kind of it's early, but I do think Nebraska leads at this point, and obviously there's kind of a question mark at the very top of this recruitment right now with LSU in a coaching search. I do think LSU is going to have a say in this recruitment. Down Alabama's going to have a say. A&M's going to have a say. Texas could potentially have a say, but Nebraska has just continued to press the gas here, build goodwill over every single visit. The first visit, it was filmed time with Marcus Satterfield and getting around the facilities and the coaching staff that really made an impression. The second time, it was connecting with Trey Taylor and getting to feel the fan and see the fan base and interact with the fan base that made an impression. This third time, it was his first true game at Memorial Stadium that really made an impact. He loved the atmosphere, loved just being around. The program is obviously a two-sport athlete, borderline five-star prospect in the basketball court as well. I spent some time over there with that coaching staff as well. And it's just a recruitment where I think at this point Nebraska has a lot to offer and has done a really good job building these relationships both on the football side and the basketball side, where they're going to be a hard out in this recruitment. I think it's going to be really hard. July is when he's planning to make a decision. I think it's going to be really hard come July for Hudson to pick up the phone and tell Nebraska no, and that matters. That's how you win recruitments. That's how kind of favorites or so-called favorites end up losing is just because some of these recruits have a hard time telling other programs no. And I think Nebraska's put themselves in that position with Hudson. As for Terwilliger, I think that's more of a more imminent. Don't necessarily think it's imminent coming out of the weekend necessarily, but feel like Nebraska well positioned there. Battling Iowa State, Michigan is expected at Michigan at the end of the month, but at this point, not sure if that visit actually happens. But still could. I think regardless of his recruitment, I think that's a game he wants to be at. I think Iowa State remains the biggest threat. Iowa has, kind of let him know that he's a priority, that he's a guy they'd like to land and a guy they'd like in the class. But I just, for whatever reason, there just hasn't been that mutual love, not to the way there's been with Nebraska. He's been to Nebraska more than any other school at this point. Visited twice this season. Of course, has some family ties. His mom's from Lincoln and loves the program and loved the program growing up. So just a lot of ties there. I think the relationships on staff have developed steadily. And, this time around, he brought his younger brother, 2020 30. tight end or athlete prospect as well. He's still in middle school, but and that's just part of it. Nebraska's doing a good job of letting him know, hey, you're not just a priority, but your family's a priority to us. So, Huskers trending well there. Also think Nebraska's trending well for four-star running back Amir Brown. I put a prediction ahead of the weekend. He was back in town for the second weekend in a row. Canceled a previously scheduled trip to Texas to get back to Lincoln. Of course, the last time he was in town was for that Northwestern game last week, and he came in right after halftime and actually ended up missing just the way the flight worked out and the way he got into town. Ended up missing the kick return from Kenneth Williams and missed a lot of the kind of electric moments in Nebraska's win over Northwestern. But he was in town plenty early on Saturday. Got more personal time with the coaching staff, Matt Rule, EJ Bartel, some of the other recruits on campus, and then got to experience the full game day environment and the blackout environment. Really enjoyed it. I again input a prediction ahead of the weekend. Still feel good. I've been joined by national analyst Steve Wilfong and Sam Spiegelman in that prediction. Husker Online's Brian Munson has joined me on that prediction as well. So feeling good about Nebraska there coming out of the weekend. I do think I think it's there's still time to go. I don't think Nebraska's the leader in that recruitment, but I think Nebraska moved the needle for four-star wide receiver Tay Ellis in the 2027 cycle. This was a long-awaited visit for him. He's been quite interested in Nebraska for months at this point. He's been trying to get on campus multiple times, just hasn't worked out for whatever reason. Finally got on campus on Saturday. Really enjoyed his time around Tequila Shores. Described it as it felt like family, just connecting with him. And can see himself kind of playing in Nebraska's offense, playing a role out of the slot or out wide, whichever. He can play both. Right around 6 foot, 6'1". Out of Crowley, Texas, four-star pass catcher. And yeah, a guy Nebraska would really like, and they're battling Texas A&M. I think Nebraska's earned or cemented themselves at least as a top contender alongside the Longhorns and Aggies. And moving forward, I think a program to watch. I think they're very well positioned to get it back for an official visit, either in spring or in the summer. Big weekend for the offensive line as well. Three offensive line commits were back in town in the 26 class: Rex Waterman, Hayden Ainsworth, Leon Noyle. And a good group of 27 targets as well. The one I wanted to highlight in particular is 2027 four-star offensive tackle Jake Hildebrand, number 9 offensive tackle in the country, I believe, per Rivals. And a guy, I mentioned it ahead of the weekend, but there was points over the summer and coming out of his first visit back in April that the sources believe Nebraska was the leader there and much better position than people realize. Even battling some national contenders. You've got Oregon in the mix. You have Arizona State in the mix, USC, a few others on the West Coast. Of course, some national programs. Texas A&M, kind of on the rise in there too. Alabama, a few SEC schools in the mix. But Nebraska really impressed the first time around and continued to impress. He really enjoys Donovan Raiola, really enjoys the culture, that offensive line room, and he witnessed that firsthand. Just watching warm up, seeing the line connect with each other, injured guys, guys that aren't playing. This is just the way that unit moves, like a family. And he spent some time around those three commits and just recognize how close those three are, how close, kind of how the culture that Raiola's developed in his offensive line room really means a lot, and I think has Nebraska well positioned there. Again, a bit to go in that recruitment. Don't think again Nebraska's not the leader necessarily, but really think they helped themselves in that recruitment. A few other offensive linemen on campus. Just wanted to highlight out of the Northeast, 2027 four-star Olu Bobola was on campus for the first time. He's one of the faster rising offensive tackle targets or offensive tackle prospects in the 2027 cycle. Nebraska getting a good start there. Texas A&M a top contender. Penn State Northeast program expected to be in contention, but Nebraska did a really good job over the weekend and should have some staying power. Kind of sticking in the Northeast, I think that's where Nebraska really tried to take advantage of just kind of a vacuum right now with Penn State and capitalize with some of the top talent out that way. They had 2027 four-star edge rusher Abraham Sese on campus. He's the number 35 prospect, number 6 edge rusher in the country per Rivals. He loved his first visit on campus. He's been on Nebraska's radar for some time. Before he had all these accolades, I think he was a 3-star, if not unranked, when Nebraska offered. So they've been on him for a while. They've believed in him for a while. That sticks out. That means a lot. But getting on campus, seeing Nebraska's defense, seeing the scheme in action, getting around Both defensive line coach Terry Braden and outside linebackers coach Philip Simpson made an impression. And I think again, like a few others, I think Nebraska's made or earned some staying power there and kind of cemented themselves as a top contender moving forward. And again, took advantage of the opportunity. There's a vacuum at the top right now. I would say prior to James Franklin's firing, you could consider Penn State the favorite there. Right now, bit of question as Penn State works through a coaching search. Rutgers working in the mix, few programs closer to home working in the mix, but Nebraska getting them on campus, showing them that environment and getting them around the coaching staff this early has them positioned to get him back and to stick around and keep Nebraska and for him to keep Nebraska at the top of mind moving forward. In the 26 and 27 class, Nebraska had the Saab brothers on campus. 2026, Glassboro three-star wide receiver Amari Saab was on in town for the first time, and his younger brother, 2027 five-star athlete Xavier Saab on campus. Nebraska battling primarily Oregon and Alabama there. Those two really hoping to go to school together. Right now, I'd give the edge to Alabama and Oregon. Alabama, their older brother Keon Saab's safety over there. Oregon is in touch on a regular basis, has had both those guys on campus before, and just been in that recruitment a bit longer. But what has Nebraska in this mix? What could see Nebraska potentially win out here late for at least Amari, who's a couple of weeks away from signing at this point as a 26 recruit? It's Dikeel Shorts, the relationship with Dikeel Shorts. He's originally from a neighboring town in New Jersey to Glassboro, just less than 10 minutes away, actually. And those two, the families, Shorts family and the Saab families are close. And that relationship, I think the usage of Nebraska in the slot, the way they use the slot receivers, and I think just the opportunity for those two to play together for a guy like Dikeel Shorts that they both are quite familiar with sticks out, left an impression. I think again, getting on campus for the first time, witnessing that environment is left a lasting impression and has Nebraska in that mix down the stretch. So that's a curious one. I'm going to keep an eye on moving forward, just because I'm really interested how Nebraska approaches that. Both Saw brothers, of course, have offers. Um, it's just kind of a matter of time and what the timeline looks like. Are they looking to commit together? They want to play football together, but is that actually the plan? Is Nebraska, kind of willing to take both, ready to take both? I get the sense that they are, but how serious are they about both these guys? And can they beat Alabama and Oregon, who have made both of those guys feel like priorities? So that's one I'm keeping an eye on, just as Nebraska works to make some late 2026 additions. We've got more over at InsideNebraska.com coming out of the weekend and plenty more to come just as they work to put the finishing touches on this 2026 recruiting class. Some big developments over the weekend elsewhere. Damod Lewis, who officially visited Nebraska last weekend, was at Florida State this past weekend. Expecting a decision coming out of this Florida State visit. Some mixed intel there. Some believe Florida State ahead. Some believe Nebraska ahead. Florida State did pick up a flipped an edge target on Sunday. So curious how that ultimately impacts Lewis. So that's one I'm keeping an eye on. Another one, Tadarius Hughes, who was on campus last week in Florida State, four-star safety commit. Nebraska feels good about that one, their ability to flip him before signing day. But he was at Syracuse over the weekend, and the Orange have stayed, kind of stayed a presence in that recruitment. So two things I'm going to be tracking coming out of the weekend. We'll have updates on those two guys over at InsideNebraska.com. In the meantime, like I said, be sure to check out our work over there. And before we get out of here, I did want to touch on some of the work Nebraska did in the 2028 cycle. Just getting some of the top national prospects on campus early on, setting themselves up. This time last year, they were doing this with the 27 class. Part of the reason they were able to land Trey Taylor was getting him on campus as early as they did, and the way they built that relationship, and it's those relationships built in sophomore year that helped Nebraska in that recruitment. They're looking to do the same here in 2028. They had Armani Edwards on campus, number one offensive tackle in the country, per the Rivals industry rankings, out of Cypress Ranch High School down in the greater Houston area. It was his second visit on campus. Nebraska senior offensive assistant Jamar Mosey's leading the way for the Huskers there. But Donovan Raiola growing in his, role in that recruitment. And the second time on campus, getting around the coaching staff, getting to see a game on campus. The last time he was in town was just for a spring practice. So this time, really getting to experience a game, made an impression. It should have Nebraska well positioned to get him back for another visit. Asher Gioto, hope I'm saying that right, but 2028 elite edge rusher, number 9 prospect in the country, number 2 edge rusher in the country, has 28 tackles for loss and 20 sacks as a sophomore at the Bowl School out in Jacksonville. A powerhouse program, produced Mac Jones in the past, consistently has power four talent, and he's among the best to come through that program as a sophomore early on. So and Nebraska, first visit for him to Lincoln, has national programs in the mix. But coming out of this weekend, there's just a belief Nebraska's a contender to watch moving forward. They've earned kind of some staying power. He really enjoys just the activity from the front. Um, Getting around the coaching staff, the defensive coaching staff, John Butler, Terry Braden, and like I said, Philip Simpson as well. Just really liked connecting with those guys, connecting with some of the current players on the staff, and some of the fellow recruits on campus as well. Again, part of the benefit for some programs, but part of the benefit of these big recruiting weekends is sometimes you get guys that have cross paths along the way, getting to reconnect, getting to talk about potentially teaming up at a new program, and so things like that can help a program, can't potentially hurt a program because of course these guys compare and contrast. But Nebraska has done a really good job of connecting recruits together, making sure these guys get in touch with each other, build relationships with each other on campus, and continue to visit together. It's like when I mentioned with the 26 line class. Hayden Ainsworth, Leon Noyle, Rex Waterman, those guys have visited together before. They're connected. They're going to be close. They have an established relationship before they get on campus. They recruited each other to Lincoln. All of that stuff matters. And so for Nebraska, getting Gioto on campus and building that relationship early on, and again getting that connection and earning that staying power is a really big deal. Even though I know 28 is a ways away and tough to think about at this point. Nebraska also had two of the best pass catchers in that class on campus in Demarion Mays out of North Crowley High School, in Fort Worth, Texas, as well as Barrett Marshall out of Kansas City, specifically the Overland Park area of Kansas City. And both those guys, again, feel good about Nebraska. There with Mays, it was his first visit. He's kept an eye on the program from afar. Visited with two of his 2027 teammates, four-star cornerback Jerry Outhouse, three-star safety Elijah Wan Houston. Those three guys pushing for another state title. North Crowley won the state title in Texas last year, pushing for a repeat this season. But amidst that push, they stopped through Lincoln for the very first time. For Mays, it was just getting around the coaching staff, Dikeel Shorts, what his resumes looked like, who he's developed over the years, caught his attention. Nebraska's offense caught his attention, and it wasn't the day the offense hoped, but I think the atmosphere, knowing what this offense is capable of, having conversations with Shorts, Dana Holgerson, the offensive staff, left an impression, has Nebraska in that mix moving forward. Barrett Marshall, look, again, like I said, I know it's 28. I know it's tough to think about. There were very few recruits that got the personal treatment that Barrett Marshall did on Saturday. And the last time I can remember someone that was relatively not off the radar, I mean, he's a four-star prospect, but he's a sophomore. Like someone off the radar getting this level of personal treatment was CJ Brona, who's obviously now a four-star cornerback, Florida commit, and was at one point committed to Nebraska, but one of the top cornerbacks in the country who Nebraska identified early, offered, and got on campus. They feel really, really strongly that Marshall is going to be one of the top pass catchers in the 28 class, and feel strongly that he needs to be in the program. He's a top regional target out of the Kansas City area, has Jamar Wozy working on him, has Keith Williams working on him, has Dikeel Shorts working on him, a few other offensive assistants working on him, Dvoracek, and there's just multiple guys working there. And so again, I this is going to be a national recruitment. This is going to be one Nebraska's going to have to battle Missouri for, Oklahoma for, SEC programs for. And 28 again, long time, a lot can change between now and when when it's time for Marshall to sign. But Nebraska's treating him like a priority early on. It is making an impression early on, and it has Nebraska, I think, if not at the very top, right near the top. At this point in his recruitment, and they're well positioned to get him back multiple times. I think he's going to be back on campus for a spring practice. I wouldn't be surprised if he's back to camp in the summer. I wouldn't be surprised if he's back for multiple games next season. It's early, I know, and I know it's tough to think about 28, but Nebraska doing a really, really good job of setting themselves up for success in future classes. So we'll have more over at InsideNebraska.com coming out of the weekend. Appreciate you guys tuning in. that'll about do it for us coming out of the weekend. We'll have a little more intel, like I said, over at InsideNebraska.com. Potentially another video this week, but more likely than not, next time you'll see me is next week. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll be back with another episode next week.